Okay. Now, in his desperate attempts to make sure that his illegitimate government um, is being endorsed, is being acknowledged by Bobi Wine, Museveni has now decided to kidnapping, arresting, and jailing people and using them as pawns in negotiations. Like, I know so many different people have come out to say that, okay, Bobi Wine should sit on the same table with Museveni and negotiate on how to solve this particular situation that is going on in Uganda. First and foremost, what is there to negotiate? How can you say that you want to negotiate while you are arresting people, while you're killing people? I don't think that is a good tactic because you see, for the past almost 20 years, ever since we started having elections in Uganda, like 25 years ago, uh, Museveni has been using these sort of tactics whereby he twists his opponent's arms and then he forces them on the table so that they come and sit with him. He gets the photo opportunity, and then after getting that, he tells his donors that, look here, guys, the negotiations are going on very well, and we are working very well with Dr. Kizza Besigye. We are working very well with Paul Kanga Samogerere. So as a matter of fact, you don't need to worry. Just release the donor money and all this kind of thing, and everything is hunky-dory, and we just move on. That's what he does. He is stuck on a script that is completely outdated, thinking that by arresting Bobi Wine's supporters and Bobi Wine's people that he arrested in January, that Bobi Wine will come on the table and then they will release them afterwards. Now, where is this story coming from? Recently, Bobi Wine had a prayer ceremony, a Muslim prayer ceremony at the offices in Kamocha, where they invited different people to come and take part in praying for Uganda and also praying for the struggle. So while there, he made comments and said that the families of the people who are now in prison, that are being jailed and imprisoned by Museveni, we are trying to put him on pressure in order to make sure he sits on the same table and negotiates with Museveni. Now, what this means is that people, whenever they go to demand their people, they are told that, no, you go and speak to Bobi Wine to sit down with Museveni and talk. Why is Museveni so desperate to have talks with Bobi Wine? And is this the way? Is this the way on how you approach someone for talks? Well, that is really, really interesting. Anyway, let's look at the story. So, according to the Daily Monitor, it says that I won't negotiate with Museveni to free our people, Bobi Wine. Now, the president of the National Unity Platform, NUP, Mr. Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, alias Bobi Wine, has said that he has no intentions of negotiating with Museveni for the release of his supporters who were arrested last year. It is exactly 4 months since security forces rounded up and arrested members of Kyagulanyi's campaign team while in Kalangala, where he had gone to solicit votes ahead of the presidential elections in January 2021. Speaking Friday at his party's headquarters in Kamocha, Bobi Wine, during the special prayer session for NUP supporters who have died in the struggle and those in prison, Bobi Wine said that he is increasingly coming under pressure from the relatives of those in detention to talk to the government in order for them to be released. Quote, I know the families of our friends who are in prison are not happy, but I personally talked with many of them who told me that they are strong in spirit and warned me never to negotiate with Museveni because he would have betrayed the rest of Ugandans who are with us in the struggle to remove Museveni from power, he said. He, however, said, if indeed they have a case to answer, let them be taken to civil courts and be charged, as there is no body above the law. In December 2020, security forces rounded up more than 100 NUP supporters and kept them in different detention centers in Masaka. The majority of them have since been released on bail, which is not true. However, because there are over 700 people who were arrested. And what is the majority according to the Daily Monitor? That one I don't understand. However, 35 of them, mostly with close relationship with Bobi Wine, were charged in the General Court Martial with being found in possession of bullets contrary to the UPDF Firearms Act. They include Nubian Lee, Eddie Mutwe, Dan Magic, among others. Bobi Wine also called for unity among all forces of change, urging that divisions will help the state to continue dominating them. Let us remain united, my friends. Otherwise, Museveni wants to divide us, and such that he can keep in a dominant position, he said. For his part, Sheikh Ismail, an imam at Shura Mosque Bayogerere, called upon NUP supporters leaders and supporters to trust in God, because it's only Him who will liberate them from their current woes. Ismail called upon the government to stop treating opponents as though they are not citizens of Uganda. While speaking at Chankwanzi on Wednesday, Museveni said his government will deal decisively with anybody who tries to disorganize peace in the country. He said he is a resistance movement that cannot be shaken by riots and demonstrations by NUP supporters in towns like Kampala. Okay, now that is the story. Now what is interesting is that the members of families of people who were arrested were reaching out to Bobi Wine to telling him to negotiate with Museveni. So where is this coming from? Definitely the people like these officials in prisons, whenever they go to see them, they tell them, look, if you want your people to be released, tell Bobi Wine to sit down with the Museveni and negotiate. Well, when Bobi Wine met these individuals, they told him that they are strong in spirit and he should not ever at any one time think about sitting on the same table with Museveni, because he will have betrayed Ugandans. The struggle for Uganda is not all about 35 people who are in prison. The struggle for Uganda is all about like 45 million people who are under a radical, draconian, authoritarian, tyrant and dictator, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Now, why does Museveni really want negotiations so bad? Because what is there to negotiate? What is there for Museveni to offer? If Museveni is ready to guide and give out power and say that, look here, okay, I messed up, I'm very sorry, here is power, take over power please, and let us move on. I'm sorry, forgive me for the past things that I did to you, I'm sorry. Maybe Bobi Wine can consider and forgive him. But there is no negotiations that are going to take place that do not involve Museveni handing over power. For starters, Museveni is not someone you can trust if you're negotiating with him. This everyone can tell you. Regional leaders, his own family members, everyone can tell you. When you discuss something today with Museveni, he will do the entire opposite. Bobi Wine knows very well. In 2016, Kizza Besigye and all the other years that he has been contesting against Museveni, it has always been the same script. Beat Besigye up before elections, during elections, rig the elections, go to court, the Supreme Court will decide in favor of Museveni by a margin of just one person, and afterwards we go into negotiations, another phase. That has always been the script. But now, Museveni has completely been taken off the script, because we went into the elections, we campaigned before elections, we went into the elections, and then everything stopped at the courts. At the Supreme Court, Bobi Wine withdrew the case. The role of the Chief Justice was to keep Bobi Wine in the case, but he did not perform. Now, after that, different people always come up that want to facilitate negotiations, cultural leaders, religious leaders, the so-called elders, to eat money. Now, these people tried to access Bobi Wine to tell him, look here, we need to go and you sit with Museveni and talk to him. Bobi Wine turned them all down. Now, in the past, Besigye and all the other counterparts, they would always sit down and say, okay, let us go and see what Museveni has to say. So Besigye would send a delegation, and then Museveni would also send a delegation, and the talks begin. That is what Museveni wants. For the newspapers in Uganda to start saying that, okay, Museveni is in talks with NUP. That is a very big PR campaign for Museveni. The moment you say that you are in talks, what that will trigger, it will trigger the US Embassy to make a statement that, look here, what is happening in Uganda is a step towards the right direction. We encourage both parties to engage in blah, 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 blah. You know, those cliche statements. And by making those statements, the issues of Ugandans and the human rights situation in Uganda will always be swept under the rug and never to remember anything about it. So the same thing happens because that is what also the European Union needs, or these other governments, that's what they need in order to do away with this entire situation that is happening in the country. Because you have said the elections were neither free nor fair. Now, what other thing can you come out to say about an illegitimate government? Any illegitimate government needs to show some semblance of negotiations. By having negotiations, it means that these other players, like the European Union, the international community, can always say, okay, Uganda is doing good with the negotiations. That is what they need. So if you give them that, then it means that the entire struggle has ended at that particular point in the times that we are in right now, unless if circumstances change. Now, we know that the election had over 12 candidates. I don't know why Museveni, Museveni finances his own candidates in every elections that we have. If at all Bobi Wine is not, is not a threat to Museveni, if at all Bobi Wine is not, someone that he's scared of, well, you're not scared of his protest, then let him protest, number one. Number two, if at all you're not scared of him, then I think what you should do is you go and look for someone else to negotiate with. The elections had over 12 candidates. 12 candidates were in the election. We had the Maos, we had the Amuriato boys, we had the Katumbas, and so many other people. Why don't you go and negotiate with those people? Why do you stick to Bobi Wine to tell him that, look here, man, I want to negotiate with you? Why don't you go and arrest other parties? Why don't you go and arrest other people in other different political parties that contested with you? But he still goes after Bobi Wine. Reason being, he knows that Bobi Wine is capable of toppling him. He knows Bobi Wine that has been capable of doing harm, and he has done a lot of harm to him. That's why he is doing whatever he is doing. Now, for us who are in the struggle, we should understand that if at all things are going our way and the junta or the dictator is looking for talks, then just know that we are winning. If at all Museveni was the one who was actually in a safe and much better position, he wouldn't be asking for talks at this particular juncture. Bobi Wine hasn't called on Museveni to come and sit down in talks with him. We know all the trick. The trick is that you go and sit with Museveni, take a picture. Whenever you take that picture, send it to Washington, send it to Downing Street, and use those pictures as evidence that there is something big that is going on in Uganda. Negotiations are underway, and so you don't need to pay attention to what is going on in the country. Release the donor money and so on and so forth. That is what usually happens. But now Bobi Wine learned Museveni so well. He learned his tactics so well. He came in this whole thing very well prepared. He has put the entire international community on tiptoes. For the very first time, the international community doesn't know how to proceed. They don't know whether to acknowledge Museveni's government or not. Because if you acknowledge the government, then you are condoning human rights abuses. You're condoning the murder of people on November 19th and 20th. In Uganda, you're condoning the stifling of freedom of speech and expression. And you are endorsing sham elections that were declared unfree and unfair by the US government, as well as you are protecting a dictator who is ruthless against his own people. So what do you do as an international player? You just have to ignore the situation, number one, if you can. And by ignoring it means even in terms of aid, you have to cut down your aid that you give to the country. And that really hurts Museveni. Because by this point in time, Museveni would have received a lot of congratulatory messages from the European Union, international community, the US, and negotiations would be underway, talking of making Besigye vice president, making so-and-so prime minister, and all these kind of things. But now, the young man from Kamocha, 38 years old, he's not getting into that kind of craziness. He said no to negotiations. There is nothing to negotiate about. The only negotiations that are supposed to happen is negotiations about Museveni leaving power. Now, as you all can see, that the reason now it makes all sense as to why Museveni is abducting and kidnapping people. He's abducting clearly and kidnapping people in order to use them as pawns, as chips in his negotiations. That look here, I have 35 of yours, people, so if you negotiate with me, I will give them back to you. What do you say? I thought Museveni was even much clever than that. Seriously. Now, whoever deals with Museveni, whether you're supporting him, especially people who support Museveni, you all should understand that in Museveni's government, you are pawns. If he can decide to kidnap people and kill people to use them as pawns, now what about you who support him? For you are like pawns 100%. You don't have to even think for yourself. It is Museveni who thinks for you. It is Museveni who decides for you. I looked at Ekon coming to Uganda recently and I even laughed. Because Ekon is also now a pawn in Museveni's game. He uses him for the international community to legitimize his sham elections, to legitimize his theft and all this kind of thing, which is really sad. So guys, as you can see, it's really good that Bobi Wine turned down these talks and Museveni is going to die in his own movie. He's very desperate. The donor money is no longer coming in. He doesn't have money to pay soldiers, to pay salaries for his militia, SFC, and also money for himself to steal a wee bit, like to corrupt and all this kind of thing. He doesn't have a single penny. Now, that is really, really, really interesting, and we shall keep watching the entire situation on the matter. But we thank Bobi Wine for not sitting on the table with this gentleman. Let us drag it on. Do not negotiate. Let things be the way they are. Let us continue pushing. Let us continue demanding for the release of our people and continue pushing for our victory. In the end, we shall turn out to be triumph. The triumphants will prevail, and the dictators and tyrants like Museveni will fall in one way or the other. But thank you very much for listening. Give me your opinions in the comments below. Should Bobi Wine sit and discuss with Museveni or what? And also, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up or a like, and subscribe and share with your friends to give you more updates on what's happening in Uganda as well as the continent.